Hello again. I hope things aren't too overwhelming for you right now, but dare I say there's light at the end of the tunnel? This has been a ridiculously steep learning curve for a lot of us, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to carry forward some of the stuff we're learning into our classrooms when we get back in there in terms of our general digital literacy and probably more importantly, how to better communicate with students in terms of the clarity of the learning intentions, success criteria, and instructions. Some teachers have been concerned about levels of student engagement, so I've done a little digging around, contacting teachers who, according to the engagement spreadsheet, seem to be keeping students coming back for more. Though no two people are doing things the exact same way, there were some key commonalities that I'd like to share, so here we go. First thing is simplify. 3 slides maximum. Go for that. We're trying to avoid cognitive overload here. Take a look at this example. There's a lot going on in here, and while this might work in class, it's just too much for a lot of people to take in, even if you are doing a live lesson. In fact, this actually begs the question, is this maybe too much for my actual classroom as well? Can I boil it down and be clearer when I come back to class? Another thing that has helped students is the simplifying of the learning intentions and success criteria, where teachers are boiling it down to what's essential. There have been lots of reports of students struggling to understand what specifically they have to do, and having the success criteria read like a checklist has really helped. Take a look at this example from Robert in physics, where the success criteria is literally presented with tick boxes. Of course, this would be followed by some modeling in more detail, but it gives students a clear focus. A related thing that has been working for some is when you have a lot of information or tasks to communicate with students, boil it down to a knowledge organizer type checklist, like in this example from Emma in business management. In terms of the actual structure of the lesson, regardless of whether the whole thing is synchronous or asynchronous, a basic effective structure has emerged. It includes starting with a daily review, discussing the learning intentions and success criteria, modeling, giving time to do some work while being available for questions, then having a plenary. I'll go through each of these briefly. Might seem like a lot to do, but there are quick and easy ways of doing all of them. Of course, they won't all work for everyone all the time, but it's food for thought, so here we go. So number 1, daily review. Some people are posting a daily review question in Teams just before live lesson starts, Carol, to give students something to think about as people are logging in. Another method is using Mentimeter. So if you have a look here, this allows for a live written question and answer. I can give you more information about that if you'd like. The drawback is that you can't see the specific student names, but it's useful for seeing what the class knows or needs to focus on more closely. Another thing, discussing the learning intentions and success criteria. As discussed before, this is about giving something clear and concise. If a student had to look at these on their own later, would they make sense? Modeling. The simplest way to model something is to share your screen and show them. So I use my stylus, my pencil here in the Notes app, but there are many other ways you could go about it if you don't have one, like typing or talking through something you've done earlier, or turning the camera on if you dare, and writing on an actual whiteboard. Number 4 is to give students time to do the task. It's important to really overestimate how long things are going to take, because a lot of these students are on their own with this stuff. And let's face it, if some finish early and get a bit of time to go out for a walk, that's not a bad thing. And then finally, the plenary. And although you can do this live, it seems like it's working better as an asynchronous activity to allow for different task completion times. There are lots of ways this can work, but an easy one is quizzes, where you assign a quick 1 or 2 question quiz as homework, you share the code, you ask students to use their own names, then you get valuable formative information regarding how much students are actually learning. Outside of that basic lesson structure, which seems to be working, people have reported increased engagement when students are getting regular small bits of feedback. We're not talking about anything overly time-consuming. In fact, the more people write as feedback, the less effective it seems to be in terms of them acting on it. As with everything here, clarity and identifying next steps is key. A lot of people use the insert audio function of OneNote to give verbal feedback. Just have a look there. I really like what you're doing with the conversational tone in the introduction. I think we need to revisit the imagery being used later. Overall, high levels of engagement seems to be connected to a consistency of experience for the students. They know that at this time they need to go here, and there will be clear, concise instructions. No, you don't need a live lesson every time, but students should know what to expect, what to do, and how to ask for help. This does not mean you need to do all of this in every class every day. There's a danger that we start feeling inadequate when we look into videos of amazing all the bells and whistles lessons. Clearly, that's not what I'm talking about here. This is simply me pulling together the big messages from teachers in our school that seem to be having a solid level of engagement. There's no question that all this is more time consuming than being in class, but hopefully it'll mean we get more efficient in all areas and be able to bring this knowledge back into our classrooms. To summarize, simplify. Do you need that extra slide? Do you need those extra couple of words in your success criteria? Trim it down. Use a criteria like a checklist. Boil it all down. Think about the consistency of experience for the students in terms of the structure of most lessons. Daily review, learning intentions and success criteria, modeling, giving time, the plenary, and finally, but not limited to, quick, small, useful bits of feedback. The funny thing about almost all of this is that it's the exact same thing we should be doing in every lesson in school. If we continue to work hard at getting it right remotely, imagine how effective we'll be when we get back to school. Almost every teacher I know right now is being too hard on themselves. Stop it. Remember that to be effective, you need to be happy. So if something's not working for you, talk to someone, call your PT, send me an email, join the schoolhouse team, which is quite useful. There's a code here on the screen where you can ask questions. Take care of yourself.